Sorry, I thought I heard like a crow outside.
Speaking of mental health issues, birds are talking to you.
Creativity in progress. Hello and welcome to Creativity in Progress, where we talk about creativity in a podcast. My name is Nathan Beatty, and here with me I have
Ethan Murphy, Nathan's friend.
And
all right, Ethan's friend.
Awesome. How y'all doing today?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Got some rest. Got some coffee. It's all good.
That's good.
Yeah.
I got none of those things.
Oh no!
I got coffee.
Here, take mine.
Yeah, throw it to the monitor.
Yeah, I'm never going to give up my coffee. Like, I do have my coffee. There is that. So
Good.
Spoken like a true father.
Good.
I would never get my coffee. By the way, I like this setup. We've gone old school. It's been a while since just the three of us here.
Yeah.
So it feels good. I like this.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's
Feels right. Feels good.
yeah, it's
Feels
like
right.
yeah, it's kind of nice. So Ethan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I was telling you guys before we started recording that LA is if you could think of what the cheapest place in America is, LA is about as far away from it as possible. So I've been grinding and hustling as much as humanly possible, trying to make enough money so that I can get my car fixed so I can do some other work. But you have to spend a lot of money on gas in order to drive that car around to make money to fix that car. So it's kind of like it's one of those things where it's like if only I had a can opener to open this can. Cool. But I have to buy if I have to buy enough iron ore to make the can opener so I can open up the can. But I need to buy an English to Spanish book so I can actually learn the language in that land, so I can actually buy the ore, so I can actually buy the can opener. So that's how many steps I've had to go through and loops I've had to go through to kind of get this. Anywho, I'm doing it.
And you have to drive the can to get the iron ore to get the
Yeah, exactly.
He's doing like the circus balancing act on top of the can just down the road.
Yes. It also feels like I'm doing so many fetch quests, like I'm playing a really bad like Skyrim game or something where you had to like do all these stupid quests to go all these here. Go over to the lady in the village over there and tell her son that you like her. Once he gives you the fishing oar, then you can go over to the next village and beat up the donkey. It's like, why am I doing all these quests? Let me just give you one main mission.
Life is the worst fetch quest.
That's going to go in our mugs. Life is the worst fetch quest.
Yeah, it's it's really funny when you think about it. Like, we've been living life and we've been existing in life and we grow as a society and we get it to the point where we no longer have to go out and harvest food and make things for ourselves. And what are one of the first things we do within the first century is we make simulations of us going out and collecting things and farming things. It's like, wow, we just this is what we do for fun. We pretend that we're in the ancient times,
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But let's get that line in Back to the Future Part 3 when Doc, spoiler alert, Back to the Future Part 3, when Doc Brown is in a bar and he's talking, he actually pretty much gets drunk and starts telling everyone about how he's from the future.
And in the future, we don't need horses. We have motorized carriages called automobiles.
If everybody's got one of these does anybody walk or run anymore?
Of course we run, but for recreation, for fun.
Run for fun? What the hell kind of fun is that?
How much does he have?
None. That's the first one. He hadn't touched it yet. He just likes to hold it.
Doc! What are you doing?
I've lost her, Marty. There's nothing left for me here.
All right, but that's why you gotta come back with me.
Where?
Back to the future.
They run for fun.
You're right. Why do we?
I can quote that movie. And by the way, he actually didn't get drunk. He actually hadn't had a sip the entire time.
Right.
He was just, and it wasn't until he took the sip and he fell over. Yeah, I've seen that movie way too many times.
No, you're right. And I'm glad you called me up because someone online was like, actually, I can hear the keys being typed now. And someone's like, actually.
Well, actually.
Well, actually, ... Yes. So.
Yes.
The pushing up the glasses and with the tape in the middle. Yeah.
Exactly. We're not stereotyping. We're not stereotyping at all. You know?
I know because I am that person.
You were halfway through the email before I jumped in.
Yeah.
She's emailing me right now. I can see it.
Texting you. But, yeah. Well, well, out of curiosity, going back to just real quick about the expense of LA, how much does a gallon of gas cost out there now?
I'm so glad you asked. So the place I go to is the cheapest place. And that ranges, sometimes it's anywhere from $3.40 to $3.40 a gallon to like $3.50 or so. That's the cheapest low end. Now the high end, the one that's right next to, like literally right down the street from me, it's literally the cheapest is $4.99 a gallon.
Oh my God.
And an Exxon, and it's just an Exxon, the exact same place. I mean, I remember in Charlottesville, it was like on a high bad day, it was like $2.50 at Exxon per gallon. So it's literally twice as much for the same exact product. Well, and it's kind of like that across the board for things. Yeah.
That is dumb. That is just dumb.
That is ridiculous.
That's where
I mean, it's smart on their end, but
sure. Yeah.
Well, that's a funny thing because like that's the only thing, like, because Charlottesville isn't exactly a cheap place to live. But that is the one thing, because my family lives in Pittsburgh, and like Pittsburgh, everything is cheaper there. Like everything is cheaper there except gas. In Pittsburgh, gas is hovering around $3 a gallon right now, and and but down here it's like what? It's like $2.30 now, something like that. And that is the only place where Charlottesville is cheaper than Pittsburgh. But that's just obscene. Like $4.99 is just like for
the low. I don't know.
Sucks to be you.
To be fair, it is LA.
to be fair. I mean, do you need to say more?
To be you.
Yeah, he'll type it now. Well, actually, sucks to be you.
It sucks to be you.
It does sucks to be me.
No. That does suck.
Yeah.
And I hope that things pick up so you don't have to keep paying out the ass for it.
Yeah, I know. No. Well, this is also a bad time for that, because of all the crap going on in the world with oil and all that. So that's just
right. That's
fun.
Yes.
Fun. So mental health.
Yay!
Let's get into the heavy stuff and get into the light stuff of mental health. Nice segue. Jeez. What are we doing with our lives?
I have no idea.
Compared to the bullshit happening, it's like, it is. It's tough.
Yeah. It is a respite. It actually is a respite. Yeah, I agree with that. So, Nate,
yes,
my friend.
Yes.
You brought up mental health.
Yes.
Did you want to lead us into today's topic?
Sure. I will be happy to do that. But before we do that, Nathan dropping in here. I just wanted to take a minute and ask everyone to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you get your earhole entertainment. If you have already done so, if you could do us a favor and be sure to give us a review on the platform of your choice. It really helps us out. Okay, with that out of the way, back to the show. Back to our topic of the day. So one of the things that in the live event that we did at Telegraph was we spoke with Laura Lee Gullidge, and she was talking to us about her work with using art, essentially art therapy, and using art and creativity to help with mental health. And Ethan brought this up, and she and I just really liked the idea, and Ethan brought up the idea of us talking a little bit more about that today, because it's just, I think it's something that a lot of creatives do in various ways. Like a lot of creatives have mentioned that. I know I do it, and so that's pretty much what we were thinking about talking today.
Right on. Another thing that's in more recent, why this is kind of topical, is because Ari and I are really big fans of Bill Hader. Mm-hmm. And recently the movie It came out, and right around that same time, It Chapter 2 came out. And around that same time, Bill Hader released a video, I guess a series of videos talking about his anxiety and how he had anxiety attacks numerous times around when he was doing Saturday Night Live, and how being on a live show in front of a national audience can be one of the single most adverse things for a person that deals with anxiety. And he talked about how he learned how to deal with it, and how even though he is, quote unquote successful and everything else, he still deals with it on a daily basis, and what he does to kind of process all of that. And so in light of Bill Hader and the movie It being out, and also the show Barry winning another Emmy this year, it's just yesterday, that's last night, we also thought about talking about how other artists, other creatives besides us, kind of how what their process might be and how they would do it, just like Laura, what she did with her book and her series, and also getting into our own vibes, getting into our own personal stories. This episode might not be as overtly fun as some of our other ones, because it may seem a little awkward or uncomfortable, but it's an important episode that we wanted to go ahead and tackle a bit. I myself deal with all kinds of whole slew of things. On the outside, I may seem very together and handsome and tall and suave and mustached and everything else, but I am a wreck. I am a literal mess. Ari laughed because she's known me for almost 5 years, and she knows how horrible person I actually am. Nate,
so true.
and Nate knows too how bad a person I am. So
No. I love you, man.
I love you too.
Thank you for. I love you, bro.
Guys, I can't wait being on this.
Oh, you got a handkerchief.
No, but for real.
But feel free. This is a safe place.
Yeah, and
safe space.
Thank you for sharing your story, and it's something that I definitely identify with, especially with what Laura was talking about, because I don't do art therapy for other people, but I do art therapy for me. So
yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it is something that in a lot of ways, I think when you are creating art, it is a form of therapy, no matter what your mental state is on the scale of completely sane to absolutely insane. I think it is a form of therapy no matter what, because it was like I said during the event. I said, art, and creating art is a form of emotional expression. And it could be any kind of emotion. It doesn't have to necessarily be happy, sad, like the basics. It could be apathy. It could be, and that tends to be the kind of stuff that people look at in museums and go, what? But it could be any kind of emotion that is being expressed through the art. And this is also a very argued topic. What is art? We're getting into the deep stuff here, but I do think that that it is a form of therapy no matter what, because I know personally, in the things that I do, in the writing that I do, and in the illustration that I do, I'm getting emotions out, and it's something that I know personally has helped me, because it helps me step outside of what is going on up here, because I take whatever is going on up here, putting it on the page or on the digital whatever, and getting it out of here and being able to step outside of it and go, okay, let me see. Oh, okay, I see why I felt that way, because of whatever reason, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you find, as a writer, for both of you, as you're both writers, do you find it's easier to see what your thought processes are using words? Have you ever tried using art, or do you, is writing something that helps you organize your thoughts more?
Definitely, in my case, I didn't realize it for several years, but it actually is. Writing does help me organize my world and what I'm going through in a way that, constructing, say, making a model or a sculpture or something like that wouldn't, I don't think. There's back when I was 21, 22. Yeah, a little. Yeah, it's before I met our best friend Susan. I wrote this story, this big long screenplay called Infallible. And long story short, it's about this character who's a seemingly basic, average guy, and how in this world there's literally the single most beautiful woman in the world that every other guy and some women want, and she's kind of hidden herself away that no one can actually get to her unless they complete these challenges. And the challenges are literally beating her four brothers. And there's one brother that's extremely fast, one brother's extremely strong, one brother's extremely tough, and one brother's extremely lucky. And when I say extreme, I mean like they're like God level. Like a guy that runs so fast, he literally makes a sound barrier, a guy that's so strong he can pick up like a building, that kind of stuff. And he ends up beating these four brothers and eventually gets to the woman, the girl. And I realized that story, I wrote that story because I was dealing with having problems being single, being frustrated, trying to date somebody, and I looked at so many other guys with so much jealousy, even the world with so much jealousy. And I was trying to find a way to actually overcome the world. And so I used this story to basically, I put myself in the place of this main character as a way to kind of deal with that frustration. How could I beat the world seemed impossible. How could I beat an impossible world just to get a date with a great girl kind of thing? So yeah, that was this example of how my writing, I was definitely using my writing to deal with or make sense of my world. And at the time I wrote it, I did not understand that I was doing it. I wrote it for a contest, a screenwriting contest. And it wasn't until years later I actually showed it. I showed an excerpt to our best friend Susan, and she helped me really understand what I was actually doing. So it actually kind of came back full circle.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna turn it on you. I was just gonna say, but I guess Nathan can go first. Yeah, Nathan can go first.
Well, I was just going to say that I have a similar thing with the book that I'm currently writing and rewriting because I've got so many ideas and so little time. But what happened there was because of a lot of stuff going on in the world at the time, and I will leave. And it was written within the last 3 years, so you can kind of figure out the
how pointed.
Yeah. But you know, of all the stuff that was going on in the world at the time, and you know, for someone in my position, especially, you know, I will never forget. It was the morning after the event. My father-in-law was like, "Wow, this is," because he was in town because my son had just been born, and he was like, "Wow, this is really interesting. I would need to go and get myself a paper and save this and everything." And I'm like, and I'm just like, it's like I have a hangover, you know. I'm just like drinking my coffee and just like, oh God. And he's like, "What's wrong? This is really interesting." And it's like, it took everything in my body to say, "You're going to be dead in a decade. I just had a son." Okay.
Yes.
Like, you know, I'm sorry, but I've got to live with the fallout of this, and I got to raise kids in the middle of this, you know. And that may seem like it's an over exaggeration and all of that to some. To others, they may think, "Why didn't you actually say that?" But what I did was I needed to get, like, I was angry. Like, I was just very angry at what was going on in the world and everything. And I think a lot of people do this. They have, like, you know, for lack of a better term, fantasies of where, like, oh, what would I do in this situation? And, you know, and in every one of those situations, you know, the logic pops up at you and goes, "Yeah, you do realize that you're, you know, you're an overweight middle-aged guy. None of this is true. None of this is going to happen. You are not a Ninja Turtle," you know. And so, you know, so what I did was I created this character who essentially is me. A little bit thinner, a little bit taller, a little bit more hair, and a little bit better looking. But he's essentially me, and he's invincible, and nothing can hurt him. But what I found fascinating about the character was just because he was invincible doesn't mean he's truly invincible. Like, yeah, like bullets can't hurt him.
Invulnerable, yeah.
Yeah, he's invulnerable, but what's going on around him, the other people around him are not. And so I used that vehicle to kind of organize my anger and organize my thought process around what was going on in the world. And I'm still kind of doing that. I'm still trying to grapple with these things. I'm not as angry as I was. I'm not as, and I know that it helped. Also therapy and medication, but the writing did help me with that, because it helped me get perspective on my situation, which I think is extremely important in those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ari,
yeah, I think
yeah. All right,
well, I haven't done that myself, but I've self-insert fantasies, like the kind that you guys are talking about, can be very powerful. And I remember reading a lot of them as a kid, because I mean it's escapism. Like, you get to imagine that you're, for me, like, stronger, better looking, cooler, can attract all the people at once, and while it might not be true in reality, it does help you organize your thoughts and maybe gain confidence, and just help. It's like, it's catharsis.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I totally understand. I mean, I think it's important, if you find yourself gravitating towards that kind of outlet, then you should give it a go. I mean, even if it's not writing, then maybe you could draw yourself as a superhero or something. I mean,
right. Well,
whatever
is that
makes
something
you feel. Well, no, whatever makes you feel more in control, and more powerful, as a way of self therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you haven't actually drawn a lot of superheroes, quote unquote, but have you ever drawn, as an artist and illustrator, ever drawn a self-portrait of yourself, just to see, in a way, like almost like as an experiment, how you kind of see yourself? Because I mean, obviously, if you do yourself,
I've drawn many self-portraits, but none of them have been direct self-portraits. Like, I don't just draw myself. This is super like edgelord stuff, but in high school, one of my portraits was me looking, a drawing of my reflection in a knife.
Wow.
And one of them in college the assignment was to do like a life drawing of yourself, and everybody just sort of did it typically, but I did it with my back turned. So yeah.
What made you decide to go with you?
Well, all those fun things like insecurity and not being confident and stuff, and I still struggle with that stuff.
Sure,
but yeah, no, I've done a lot of like quote unquote self portraits, but they haven't been the typical kind. And I prefer to do, when I'm like venting my emotions, I prefer to not draw myself necessarily, but sort of draw like amorphous characters of some kind. Although I have done like comics of myself. Yeah.
And do you, I guess the thing is, it's a weird question. It's for both of you, to some extent. I think it's something that I do too. I think, Nate, your idealized version of yourself is like you said, a seemingly invulnerable, nigh invincible character that's able to protect people as best he can. Of course, things go awry from time to time, but that's kind of his MO. He's always trying. He's able to help people in a way that you're not able to do right now in the real world. Ari, it seems like as an artist, you're always, when you do a self-portrait, quote unquote, you're looking at it from the perspective of yourself under different means. So like you said, you look at yourself in the reflection of a blade, or you have your back turned. It's through your own prism. So of course your self portrait is going to be from your own eyes. So you see, there's a lot of weight behind it. The way that I do my self-portrait as a writer, if I portray myself as a character in the story, it's going to be as I see myself in one way or another. For example, Slade and Ash. I'll go ahead and get real personal here. I'm clinically bipolar. I've been diagnosed for many moons and many episodes and all that kind of stuff. And Slade and Ash, I realized as I was writing it more and more, is an introspective story on me. I see myself when I go through episodes and ups and downs and manic and whatnot, depressive as a monster of sorts. And so Slade and Ash, the story of Slade and Ash, for everyone who has no idea, Slade is a character who literally becomes a monster, an undead monster, and he wants to kill himself and is incapable of doing that. And the character Ash is a person who is almost a nihilistic being in this world, who has pretty much just said, this world is so crazy, all I can do is just try to commit murder and mayhem and have fun with it as best I can. And both of them realize that those two extremes are too much, and as they get closer to each other, they realize that there's a middle ground somewhere. And that's kind of how I felt when I was extremely depressed and saw myself as a monster. I saw myself as Slate. When I was more manic and didn't care, I just wanted to go buck wild. That's more like Ash. And so having a story that portrayed those two versions of myself was kind of how I dealt with my own world, and it helped me make sense of things the best I could. It was a self-portrait, but it was a self-portrait written over a series of comic books as opposed to painted or drawn, illustrated, and whatnot. And again, it was through my perspective. It wasn't the way that Ara would see me or the way that Nate would see me. It was through my own, so to speak.
That's really interesting. I like how the way you approached that was you actually created two characters to manage the different parts of your personality, which is a little bit of what Laura was saying in her interview, where she kind of created characters within her mind, and she actually names them of her different aspects of her personality and in different moods, I guess. I find that interesting because that's admittedly, she does it in a different way than you did. You created a piece of art through that. And she does it just in from what she said in the interview, it seemed like she just kind of did it in her day to day, in managing her thought process. But I find that as a very interesting way to approach that, because the closest I've ever because I'm an actor, I tend to create characters, and then they're just kind of characters in my head. And that's how I pretend I'm sane. But it's something I would do is I'd be driving along, to work or whatever, and I would be trying to process something in my brain, and I would just pick one of the characters and talk to myself in that character voice. To, I guess just try to make sense of it. And a lot of it is just mundane, like, oh, I must go get the bread and milk today, nothing fancy, but,
No, that's not fancy at all. That's very fancy.
Yes, it sounds fancy in the accent. But
it does, yeah.
But I just find that very interesting how you because what I did with Joe is I just took myself and just plunked him in there. I do also like how the idealized version of myself is just an average guy. It's just like I could be president. No, I'm going to be just an average dude.
Literally call that.
Yeah. But yeah, I just took a whole character.
Taller,
yeah. But I just kind of took myself and just plunked it into this character. And obviously, obviously there are differences, but I pushed him in certain ways that I wouldn't go just for sake of story. But
sure.
But yeah, but I find that fascinating how you handle that, and you did it very well. I think that's awesome.
Well, I think that's something else. Not to smash that too much, but I think that as artists or creatives, we do tend to pull from our own experiences, our own life. So in some aspect, a lot of art can be derived from the adversities or issues or problems we face, things we deal with. In a lot of ways, sometimes the best art comes about from the grimmest of circumstances. Not always, of course, but sometimes it's how it is. And I think that being able to try and work through that in your art is oftentimes where is the sweet spot. For example, a lot of the things I work or write on, a big theme that I have is characters trying to find redemption in some way. And because that's kind of how I feel in my own life too, is I feel like a failure of I've done so many wrong things. I'm trying to find my own redemption. So it's something that I can definitely relate to. And I feel like most people in their own lives, more often than not, unless you're a clinical sociopath, you feel like you've made some kind of mistakes in your life and you wish that you either hadn't made them or wish you could atone for them in some manner. And so it's a relatable topic. So it's something that it's a theme that I come back to more and more because it's something that they say write what you know, and it's something that I know. Is there for you guys? Does there tend to be a theme in your work? I know art may be a little different as far as if you were hired to do something or whatnot, but there may be something that you consistently draw that's pulling from something in your own experience or natures or something that you do as far as your voice acting or acting, something that you the way that something that kind of a constant that happens in your work.
Well, my personal work when I'm not, for myself, my personal work tends to be dark in subject matter. I don't really know why that is necessarily, because sometimes when I'm doing it, I feel fine. Like,
sure,
I'm not working through any issues. I just gravitate toward it. But I do, even when I am working through some stuff, I don't really know how to put it. It's just a catharsis. When I'm putting what I'm feeling into a visual medium, it might not be exactly what I'm feeling, because sometimes the matchup between what I see in my head and what's coming out on paper or on the screen is like completely inaccurate, because sometimes that's just how it is.
Right.
But it just makes me feel better. And if I can't do that,
sure,
then it makes me feel worse. So yes. If I have no outlet, then I get more and more depressed. And I've told Ethan this, but when I can't do art, when I feel burnout on doing art and I can't bring myself to put pen to paper, I will turn to writing, because it's like a completely different muscle to me, but it helps get out the stuff
right,
with the same kind of effectiveness, I would say.
Right.
And then when I get sick of that, I go back to art. So it's like, it's a nice constant flippy floppy.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What's funny is I am completely theorizing here, and I'm probably way off base. But one way that I kind of interpret that is just that the darkness or the dark thoughts or what have you that you have stored up in your brains as you're drawing them or illustrating them, even though they're not, you don't have any dark thoughts in that sense as far as doing these crazy monstrous nightmarish things, but kind of expressing yourself and putting them out, getting them out of your brain kind of gets the darkness in a way out of your body or out of your psyche in some level, maybe. I don't know. I know, for example, like Brian Fuller, who we like a lot.
Yeah, I was just thinking about him. I was like, he's the sweetest guy, but he makes some really fucked up shit.
Makes some incredibly dark stuff. And I think he has that TED talk he did. He talked about how by being able to express those thoughts in his work, he feels less inclined to do those things in his own. I'm paraphrasing, but it's kind of that idea as far as it's almost like you're getting it out of your system in that way.
I am getting it out of my system, but I have absolutely no desire to do any of those things at all at any time. Yeah. Like, it's not a preventative measure; it's more of an exploratory, like, what if?
Right. That's fair too. Yeah.
I know for me, it's a similar thing, and I find it interesting that you do a similar thing through your art that I do in my writing. And Ethan can attest to this because he's read some of my work. I, and as as a common theme in the podcast, that I am not a person who really likes violence or horror or anything like that. I am a very squishy human being. That being said, some of my writing is like when I write some action scenes in particular, it gets gnarly. It gets gnarly really bad. Just because as I'm envisioning the scene, my brain goes to pretty dark places in those scenes. And a lot of times, and I think it comes from my and like you said, Ethan, when you write, you're looking for redemption. A lot of times in my writing, I'm looking for justice.
Yes.
I'm looking.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, I'm looking for okay, like John Wick, like they killed his effing puppy. Okay, like
a big old puppy at that.
Yeah, he has got a blank check from me. Like he could do anything to those bad guys, and I would watch that movie and
should.
Yeah. And I am all about it. Like you go ahead, I don't care. It can be gory as hell, and I would watch it and enjoy it. But if you turn that movie into a Holocaust film, or you turn it into a movie where the victim isn't a guy who killed another guy's puppy, and I realize the logic is squishy, but it's just something about justice in my mind that happens where so when in my writing, a lot of times these characters that are getting their, whatever's blown them off, whatever, they have done something horrendous to do it. Right. And so it's, and it's just a way that my brain processes it. And it's not even that, and like Ari, like you said, it's not a preventative measure. It's these scenes appear in my head and I need to get them out because I don't like them in there. And it's like, I need, and then once they're out, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm fine.
It's cool.
Right.
So,
that's something that fascinates me is, because like there are things that we can imagine and explore in our fantasies and our fiction that we would never in a million years do as people. Because we've spoken about this on the podcast before about darkness and catharsis and how fiction allows us to create a safe space to explore these subjects. And if you can't do it in reality, then where better to try and sort your emotions out than with a readily available fictional space. And this is something that therapists are like, write it down, write letters that you will never send, write fiction that you would never ever do to help you process these thoughts and emotions. It's a very important tool. And I don't pretend to know the science behind it, but it's just, it helps. Everybody knows that it helps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, Patton Oswald, Nate's a big fan of, and Ari's obviously aware of him. Patton Oswald, after his wife passed away recently, how he did a STEM special. And he talked about it very openly, pretty much how he was a wreck after she passed away, and how pretty much how her theory always was that the world is a random, messy, chaotic entity that had no system of governing control at all. It was just a mess. And Patton kind of pushed back about, there was meant to be a system of right and wrong to it. There was meant to be a system of order to it. Mm-hmm. And how he said that there was a joke where he said, and she proved him wrong by having her, she proved him wrong by dying.
Routine that he did. And
I did hear about him and his wife, and I think I watched like an interview on Conan or something years ago about it, but I have not seen his routine.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
It's very raw. The first half is very, very raw. But
strike that, reverse it, the second half.
Oh, the second half he does it. Second half.
Yeah, he eases into it.
He eases into it. The thing is, he's not holding back. You can still see him, because it happened a while after. It wasn't like the day after. It was a while after.
Yeah, it was about a year. Yeah.
But the thing about it is, though, is that he clearly is expressing he's getting it out of his system by almost like having being with an armchair expert themselves or the actual therapist sitting down and actually just verbalizing these things, getting it out of your chest, expressing it. There was an old, what was it, the guy, the guy that Houdini named himself after, Houdin, used to always talk about how the brain is, I'm paraphrasing here again, I always paraphrase everything, but he pretty much said that the brain is designed to express itself. And that if it doesn't have an opportunity to do so, it'll fester. So if you can imagine what a festering organism in your body will do to you, that's kind of what all kinds of problems that we go through, all kinds of issues, and some mental health things come from us just oppressing and suppressing so many things. And whatever, if you can find any kind of a conduit to express these things, whether it be through stand-up comedy or being an illustrator or a novelist or an athlete or a dancer or whatever it is, it's definitely there's more than enough evidence to back up the idea that's definitely going to help you in some way.
Yeah.
Science.
Oh, yes. Science.
Science.
Yes.
Science.
Annihilation. I'll just make a comment on that before I dive into my own my own little journey of science. But Annihilation is, and I've talked about that. I talked about this on the episode with Heather. It is one of the best comedy routines, I think, that I've ever seen, because he so deftly goes between, he like walks that line where, the first half is just pretty standard. Like he, just goes through the comedy bits, and it's, and that part's standard Patton Oswald, funny, commenting on, current events and random stories from his life. And then he shifts. And when he shifts, he walks that line where you're laughing and crying in the same run of time, like in the same minute, and it is like, oh man, it's like there are parts of it that are rough, and even just starting to think about the things that he said is getting me like, because because he talks about how he had to tell his daughter, and and all of that. Like he approaches that like just straight up, but then he tells this hilarious story that is kind of surprising to me, that I'm calling it hilarious, about how he had taken his daughter out on a trip during the week of Mother's Day, and then this hilarity ensued, but yet in the next beat you're crying again, and it's just like it's unbelievable. It's really good, but
but I feel like that's life in general. I mean, this also is dealing with how to move forward with any kind of issues or mental illness or whatnot. Comedy and tragedy go walk hand in hand, and the best way to oftentimes deal with tragedy is through comedy of some kind. Whether it be a coping mechanism or whatnot, a defense mechanism, it's something that's to help you kind of deal with it. The world is such a serious, harsh place. You have to have some levity in it. You can interject it yourself. That's why so many comedians have very tragic past, or even have a tragic end, is because they are using their ability to make jokes and make people laugh as a way to deal with their less than favorable conditions in real life.
It's a comedy, and I don't want to say comedy in particular, but I think it's because of the very nature of the business tends to be more. There's more of a spotlight on that kind of thing, when it happens, because they tend to, comedians, especially ones that have really tragic pasts and lives, tend to burn very brightly and then go out. Just off the top of my head, Chris Farley, John Belushi, sorry. Jim's still with us.
Jim's also tragic. He's a very tragic person.
But we love him.
Sure.
But yeah, Chris Farley, Sam Kinison, there's just a ton.
Even Robin Williams, so you could say Robin Williams.
Oh yeah, Robin Williams. Oh Jesus, yeah, my hero.
Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor. He didn't. He actually he made it pretty far, didn't he? He
made it pretty far, but he had multiple times where he almost killed himself accidentally. With either smoking in bed, because he was
that's another perfect example. Like the bit that he does after the whole thing of where he caught himself on fire when he was smoking crack. Yeah. Like that bit is hilarious, but when you're looking at the subject matter, you're like, what?
Are you allowed to laugh at this?
Yeah,
it's hilarious in hindsight.
Yeah, exactly. But to tell you about my my little journey, and my journey has actually been quite recent. I had for the longest time, I would be struggling. I used to drive the warden nuts because I would go through these bits where it's like, there's so much I want to do and I just can't wrap my head around how to do it, and I was, and it was, and I wasn't happy in my career. And I had all these creative ideas and thoughts and I just couldn't get anything off the ground. I was just a lot of fits and starts of projects and things. I could plan and start a project like anybody, but getting it through the mid period to the end, I sucked. And yeah, and I was having a bit of a rough go, and it started getting kind of rough. So I went to my doctor, and I was like, okay, we need to let's start start medicating me, doc. And we went through various iterations, and then unfortunately he put me on a set of medication. Not his fault, obviously, he didn't know. He put me on a set of medication that took me to a pretty dark place. And so I immediately, and we're talking, this was March, like this is not like a long time ago. And I called him up and I said, okay, this isn't working. We need to figure out something else. Let's call in the big guns. So I set up a thing to go talk to somebody else and talk to a psychiatrist. And before I went to the psychiatrist, I stumbled upon a thread about ADHD. And I was blown away by the discussion about it and about how it was affecting these people, particularly ADHD inattentive type. Because I thought ADHD was bouncing off the walls. You can't, you can't censor yourself, that kind of thing. But I'm reading these inattentive type things and people are saying, oh geez, I can't get stuff done at work. And I always, I'm always blowing deadlines and I just can't get anything off the ground. And I'm like, this is my life. Like, this is my God. So I called up my doctor and I said, this maybe? And he said, well, let's see, go talk, you have your appointment, go talk, whatever. And I was there 5 minutes and he was like, I know exactly what you've got. I know exactly what you have and we'll finish diagnosing you and then we're going to get you the right thing. And to say it was life-changing is an understatement. Cause getting on the right drug, which thankfully, and I recognize I am very fortunate in that my diagnosis and my, and the process of getting me medicated went very smoothly. I went had about as smooth a process as you could have in that thing. And I went from to give you an example at work, I went from pretty much on the brink of being fired. I was very close. Oh yeah. Like it was like I know they were having meetings going, what the hell are we going to do with this guy? Because he's just not.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was bad.
Okay.
And I was actually starting before all this happened. I was starting to okay, I need to start looking for another job so that way I can get out of here before I get canned. Which is a pattern. I went from that to being I don't want to say I'm a top employee by any stretch, but I am I've already implemented and set up multiple projects that have saved the university a lot of money and also solved a lot of problems for the university. I have just completely turned myself around, and there are people at work who are like, but who is this guy? He was desk meat over in the corner doing nothing.
Right.
And now he's, completely turned around. So, and then, with CIP, the whole reason the CIP network exists is because of this. So, yeah, right. So that's,
you've actually been more proficient all around, but because I knew you, March, that was my birthday. So I can very much place exactly where we were back then. I remember you talking about this. You talking about the possibility of needing medication, the possibility that you may have had ADD or ADHD or what have you, and you seemed very frustrated with where you were, but at the same time you weren't sure what to possibly do. And I remember right after you found the right medication and how different your outlook was. And I think this does tie back into Laura, because Laura, with what she's doing with her writing her books, is she's trying to. You were under the impression that ADHD was pretty much you bouncing around the wall, being a wild kid that needed Ritalin and was a nonstop nuisance. And most people have that misunderstanding. Same thing as being bipolar. They think that's someone that's extremely loud and angry, and it's really, really sad and quiet. Extremely loud and angry, crazy, manic, and everything. And that's a misunderstanding as well, a misconception too. So it's the awareness, like with Laura's work, she's trying to make it people more aware of what these issues or mental illnesses or whatnot actually look like. So that if you actually are a person that's dealing with these things, you're better equipped to deal with it and move forward. Again, going back to Bill Hader himself didn't actually really know. I mean, he learned when he was like, I think he said about 13 or 14, he understood it then. But he went through pretty much all of middle school before he understood what was going on in his own life too. And even after he understood what was going on, he didn't know how to really deal with it that much. So it's part of the diagnosis you actually have and not being ashamed of it if you have anything going on. And then part of the prognosis, yes, of course, is medication or what have you, but being honest with yourself and finding a way to work through it, either in, your arts or what have you, in some kind of way.
I think with Bill, it was like he was halfway through his run on SNL before he got medicated. I can't say that for certain, but he was talking about how he was having panic attacks like live. Yeah. There was one he had where he was playing, I believe, Julian Assange.
Yes, that's when he was close to Julian Assange.
Yeah, and he kept holding he had a glass of water in hand. And he kept holding it in front of his face and like feeling like he was having a heart attack. And and I can't believe that he made it so far and so long, having like panic attacks off air, like backstage and going on and doing that crazy shit.
Yeah. And he said he recently in interview stuff that he didn't enjoy he didn't enjoy his time on stage in SNL until the last 2 seasons basically, because he was always having panic attacks because he wasn't treating himself or having proper treatment to deal with it. And I mean, and that's similar to what Nate had. Nate's no offense, but Nate's not a young man. He's not too young. He's not old, but he's not extremely young.
Listen here, Shani.
To imagine, but to go through as old as you are right now, to go through all those years without having the proper treatment is brutal. And I know myself. I have medication too. I know what happens when I'm not medicated properly. Ari knows what happens to me when I'm not properly medicated. So it's definitely a overwhelmingly crucial part of your healing process or the process in general of becoming your best version of you, so to speak.
The fact that I can look at myself in the mirror and say I'm not lazy is like I can't tell you how important that was for me, because prior to the diagnosis and the medication, I felt like a complete failure at life. Like it was like I couldn't get simple projects done at work because of the way my particular flavor of ADHD works. Is you can't, like, if it's not something that gives that releases the dopamine, your brain will actively work against you so you don't do it. Like so if I have to choose between, surfing Reddit and this is going to sound like I'm going to say this and it's going to sound like, well, you're just lazy. Everybody gets like that. But no, this is like, it's hard to describe. But if I had to choose between doing Reddit or working on that PowerPoint project I need to do, every time I went to go do the project, it was like my brain was filled with a fog and I couldn't focus. But the second I switch to Reddit, the fog goes away, and I'm like, oh, I can think now. And for anybody that is interested in learning a little bit more, be it because you may think you have it, or you just want to somebody around you may have it, and you're interested in it, check out on Instagram. Her name is Dani Donovan, DaniDonovan. Dani Donovan. She's made some major waves in the ADHD community recently because she has turned her Instagram into a webcomic about ADHD. And it is awesome. It is really awesome, the stuff she has done, because she does a really good job of getting across the feeling, like what it's like, like how it's difficult and like what the type of challenges she has had, because there's also an added layer to this, which is women with ADHD tend to be underdiagnosed for various reasons. And so she's also trying to get that information out as well. So it's just, it is, it is something that if you think, if any of this sounds familiar or any of this is making sense, obviously talk to your doctor. But it is like, I'm really glad I stumbled upon that Reddit thread, because I'm really glad that the fog lifted for Reddit, so I could go onto that Reddit thread and go,
Right.
what is this about ADHD? And
you outsmarted your fault.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, man. But anyway,
whether you be on the show as one of the co-hosts, or whether you're off the show or just listening or what have you, our biggest message to you all is that finding help, there's no shame at all in finding help. And there's also no shame at all in having a problem. We all have problems. My old mentor used to say there's no such thing as normal. There's also no such thing as perfect. So we all have things that we're dealing with. And that's what makes us human. That's what makes us interesting. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a very important message. Another important message is that we are not a doctor, counselor, or therapist. We hold no licenses or certifications. And this is
not even one.
Just getting
not
that out
even
there.
A little bit.
What's that?
Yes.
I said not even a little bit.
Yeah, not even a little bit.
No, not even a little bit.
So make sure y'all check with doctors and/or professional therapists before you try anything new.
And then one last note, real quick, before as Nick always says, I always say one last thing. Recently, we've been in our chat off the air. We talked about our mission statement for CIP and everything. And I actually couldn't really think of a mission statement, because when we made this podcast to begin with, I didn't have a mission. I just wanted to actually have fun talking to Nate and other guests about art and everything else. But I realized that part of our mission statement really is for people to understand how the arts can help them, and for us to be, if nothing else, be facilitators of that. Art has helped me and Ari and Nate and so many other people in their lives in so many different ways. And if nothing else, hopefully this podcast can inspire someone to express themselves creatively, and through that expression, they will find some peace. So I just wanted that to be known as our mission statement, part of the mission statement. So
I've heard from some folks, some of them close to the network, some of them that just general listeners who have said that us doing this and talking about the things we talk about has gotten them to think about creativity in different ways, and also to start getting into the creative endeavor of their choice, be it comedy, be it illustration, writing. They've been inspired to go into that, and that's a big reason why I do this. Like before my diagnosis, I was throwing myself. This was actually one of the only things that I was able to kind of push through, and I think it's because it hit that perfect button in my brain at the time, But then after the diagnosis and the medication, it was just like, okay, now I have energy to do this thing I really like to do, and and dive right into it. And just hearing those things it just rejuvenates me every time. So I hope that I agree. I hope that we continue to inspire folks to find the creativity in themselves and make it happen, and give themselves some good feels.
Yeah.
exactly, absolutely,
Good feels.
Good feels.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for today. Does anybody have anything you want to talk about before we get to the the plugin?
No.
Okay. All right. So Ari, is there anything you would like to plug this week?
I had some things that I was like, yeah, I just watched these. Barry, please watch Barry.
Yeah, you do.
Oh yes.
Yeah, you do.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good, and it sort of mirrors, to tie it back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast. It really marries comedy with drama, so you'll be crying one minute and then laughing the next minute, and then you'll be back to crying.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
it's a very, very good show, and man, I wish I could remember the other thing, but sure, let's go with that for now.
Okay. All right. I would like to promote is actually Fleabag. The character is literally called Fleabag and is dealing with a lot of struggles and issues and that kind of stuff. And I know that she herself has dealt with some stuff. I'm not sure how close it is to the character, but obviously she used that as a forum to express herself. So it's an amazing show. It's well worthy of the awards it's got. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is an amazing talent. I am jealous of her in every regard. She even has a British accent, which I don't have. So if you get a chance, please check that show out. It's awesome.
I would like to plug Frozen 2. The trailer came out.
Of course.
You
are a grown father.
Final trailer came out today, and yeah, go watch it. It's pretty crazy. It looks fun. I really like where they're taking it. I also, it's so far, like, who knows, they could completely wreck it, but well, we'll see. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, that's pretty much all I want to plug. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into the end here. So if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to Creativity in Progress on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play. You can find Ari at Twitter at Ornerine. You can find Ethan at echelonGnovels.com. You can find Nate at NathanBeattyVO.com. You can find more information on the podcast at echelonGnovels.com or thecipnetwork.com. You can call us at 434-481-1787 and leave us a voice message. You can email the podcast directly at nate@thecipnetwork.com. And you can check us out on YouTube, on Twitch, on Patreon. You can support us directly at Patreon. You can support us directly on thecipnetwork.com. And finally, our intro and outro music is the song Amigos by Platinum Butterfly, copyright 2015, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 3.0. You can find more of their stuff at dig.ccmixter.org, featuring Clarence Simpson and Susan. As always, thank you so much for listening today, and y'all have a wonderful day.
I'm handsome. I'm handsome. I'm handsome. I'm handsome.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. Put that in there.